So there's been a lot of iterating and, figuring things out as we went. The main pillars of the experience, there were 3 pillars: feel like an amazing player, feel part of a team, and feel the pressure.
I'm Evan Lade from PC Gamer, here with Pierre Tarno and Dylan Allen from Sloclap. How's it going, guys? Thanks for being with me.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So Rematch has broken away from the other games this summer to become one of the season's biggest new games, selling over 1 million copies in its first weekend. I'd love to hear from you what you think is working for players in Rematch and what explains the positive reception you've seen so far.
Gamers are a very discerning, very demanding audience. They really have a very astute capacity to analyze content, quality of mechanics, quality of presentation. I think making a good game is absolute necessity if you want the game to have any form of commercial success. Whether it's a very small indie game or whether it's a big AAA game, this applies throughout. And I think the other point is putting forward an original concept, a game that ideally players have never played, a good way to, or maybe one of the only ways to find any form of success, because it's a very, very competitive landscape out there, but players are always looking for new experiences.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial to bring something new to the table. Our game sort of looks from afar like a lot of other games. People have compared it to Rocket League and other things, or FIFA, but when you start playing the game, you have to realize it's a pretty different game in the way you play, the way you feel while you're playing it. Some players say, it just feels like actually playing football. And I think this kind of very specific feel is what, makes it different from other games and justifies, spending so much time trying to play and trying to capture that feel.
Immediately after launch, your studio has outlined some of what's ahead for players, what's around the corner in Rematch, including crossplay, which is one of your biggest priorities. Can you shed a little bit more light on what's being focused on right now and how it's going so far?
Basically, currently we are focusing on crossplay, but that's not taking all the resources of the team either. We're also still focusing on key bug fixes that will be fixed in an upcoming patch. We already did 9 hot fixes since launch. And in parallel to all that, we are both working on upcoming features and working on actually preparing the roadmap. There are 4 main areas of focus that we're going to be working on. Improvements to the core gameplay to keep adding depth, granularity for, to make for an ever more engaging, competitive experience. Our social features that are super important for us because Rematch really is a game about the joy of playing football with friends. And so this means things like crossplay, being able to join your friend's squad as a spectator, being able to team up with strangers after the end of the game. I've already made a couple of new Steam friends today and yesterday playing the game. So this aspect social is super important. Then there are other competitive features, but not directly related to core gameplay. So more like tournaments systems to provide variety in the competitive experience further down the line. We're designing a club system to allow players to organize competitively. Oh yeah, and finally, more things that are more related to casual play.
Yeah, we're looking at letting the players enjoy the game in different ways. So either, it'll be having, it's stuff that we're looking at different terms, right? There's the long-term goals, etc. So we are looking at the ability to have AI opponents, AI game modes that would, allow our game to be more accessible to people that, think they would enjoy the game, but just don't like being in a competitive kind of online environment. In all of these things, our objective is always to deliver something that is high quality and as fun as possible. And yeah, I think we have some cool things prepared for our players in the future. We just need to make sure we deliver them, in the right time and in the right way. And the game has evolved really quickly in our players' hands. We expected it to go fast, but not nearly as fast as it is going right now. So we're really trying to keep a close eye on it. There's a lot of emerging mechanics going on, and we're really keeping a close eye on it, saying, are these toxic mechanics, are these things we need to fix, or are these things, we need to sort of look at and see, okay, these are actually positive for the game. They have a positive impact from the get-go.
I'm just wondering if you can say a little bit more about that. Like, is there a particular technique or playing strategy that you're seeing from players that has surprised you? Is that what you're referring to, or is there something else?
Well, there's a couple. There's in terms of strategies, it's hard to say. I feel like it's still developing a lot. Rematch is a game where you have sort of both, right? You really have this strategy and tactical aspect that are really important. Should I do passes, etc., which bring a lot to the game. And there's also the mechanical aspect. How good am I using my different abilities? And so in terms of the strategy and the tactics, we feel like it's developing, but we are starting to look at things, especially at the higher levels, where I can't really say too much because we're still at a very early stage of reflection and gathering the information. But in terms of techniques, you might have seen there's a lot of Instagram clips going on with the blade shot and the Ippy slide and the golden boost, etc., etc. And these are 3 examples of things where we have a thread in-house where we're looking at it and saying, okay, where did these things exactly come from? Are they linked to a bug? If we fix this bug, how do we make sure that the interesting parts of this mechanic, if there are interesting parts to the mechanic, how do they stay there?
A very precise example is what we call the Dolphin Dive, which is a mechanic that started emerging and really spread, in which you see defenders who were previously attackers coming back to defend by spamming the outfield dive, because the way it was tweaked on release, the stamina cost versus the movement speed it gives you allows you to actually catch up to opponents, even if you've ill managed your stamina, if you're low on stamina. And so you sort of see emerging in many games, at each counter attack, there are like 3 attackers coming back to defend, and it's like a SeaWorld aquatic show, like poof, poof, poof. And this doesn't feel like football. This is clearly an exploit. And so just like slightly tweaking a dynamic, how do you recover your speed when you exit your outfield dive, is a way to nerf that and avoid this to happen. But to build on this example, we're also considering things like, if we nerf this ability, how does it allow you to effectively build on a successful counter?
And we're developing our strategy ourselves, and how do we answer these kind of issues? Because they, from players' point of view, you see it and you're like, wow, this is an obvious issue. They should, it should be easy to fix. But our responsibility is to look at, how do we fix it now? And is there a better fix that should come later? So this issue specifically, we do have a patch coming really soon that will solve a part of the issue, but it has some negative effects as well. And the really real fix that would have, that would potentially fix the issue completely and bring new positive effects on top of that will take more time to come. So our strategy for the moment is to really try to look at things. If there's something that's really egregious, try to answer it as fast as possible, but also, keep looking at the impact of these things and start having a strategy that goes also in the middle and long term as well.
So it seems to me that one of the greatest creative challenges in building a game like this is determining what is the move set of football, right? I mean, there are so many techniques that players exercise in the game of football. It's a big global game with a lot of diverse playing styles. And you have to sort of decide, like a fighting game, as is your guys' background, in martial arts games, what players can and can't do. What are the limitations there, right? So I'm curious how you go about that, and whether or not in the future we'll see maybe some changes or iterations to what players can and can't do.
I've been working on the game for 4 years. Dylan joined us a couple of years ago now. So there's been a lot of iterating and figuring things out as we went. I think the core initial vision of the game was like the key action was the volley actions, because these are the main pillars of the experience. There were 3 pillars: feel like an amazing player, feel part of a team, and feel the pressure. And the volley action kind of incarnates all these pillars, because it can often be, you know, really look amazing, especially if it's high up in the air, bicycle kick, or even a, you know, a low shoot on the ground. Just, you know, the ball comes in hot and boom, you know, instantly send it somewhere else. It really it feels very good. It looks great. It looks epic. So that's the amazing player component. But typically, like, the goalkeeper is a mechanic that we went without for a while before realizing that, you know, this game needed an actual goalkeeper role. That this, you know, the vision behind it was to make this a powerful character. It's really the final boss at the end of the level that, you know, the attackers have to beat in order to score. And so we iterated quite a bit on the goalkeeper. And then I think maybe the final stuff is everything that was related to tackling and dribbling, and that notion of being vulnerable in possession that keeps the pressure up, but also incentivizes team play, because when you've got the ball, you either have to push it in front of you and release control, but then, you know, it's more like touches of the ball to move it around, because if you don't, you've got a homing missile coming at you and you're going to get tackled.
It's not only about what abilities you want, is how you make them as well, you know, how they function, because we could have made the game and a lot of these abilities very differently. You know, when you play the game, you might see, you know, well, obviously a volley would work that way, or obviously a shot would work that way, but it's all the little details as well that are very important.
And, you know, two other features that you're working on are a tournament system and a club creation system. Can you tell us anything more about what those are going to look like? You know, are clubs, is your vision for them sort of like clans in other multiplayer games?
Well, tournaments is probably what's going to be coming first, and it's still being designed. But the idea is to have variety in the competitive experience, and also to have this sort of, you know, engagement, something to look forward to, because you know that at a specific, you know, time points, there's a tournament we had. You can train for it with your friends. You can, you know, put it in your agenda, and you know that, okay, we've got like a couple of hours to play this tournament, and it's something to look forward to. Even though it's a competitive thing, it can also be social, because you don't necessarily need to have your real friends to join a tournament. You can also just, you know, be matchmake with other players. And since you'll be playing a number of games with them, well, hopefully, you know, it'll create connections, players who start enjoying playing together, who are adding themselves as friends on their respective platforms, and like keep playing together afterwards. Clubs is really further down the line, but just say maybe a quick word about it. It's the direction we'd like to explore is linking it to real world cities and locations, so that when you create a club, it can be linked to the city you're currently living in, to the hometown you were raised in, and where, you know, your childhood friends who now spread all over all come from, and you want to represent this town. The idea is to ground it in that sort of reality of actual real places, real locations, real cities, because that's that's a very important part of the football fantasy, and from that stems a lot of interesting things like playing derbies against other clubs from the same city, you know, local, national tournaments between clubs of a certain country, etc., etc.
Another thing I think we can say about the tournaments is, you know, we talked about all of these game modes and maybe AIs, etc., or variety in game modes that we would add along the way. But tournaments also add sort of variety and new way to play for, you know, the competitive players really engaged. That, you know, they just really like Rematch the way it is, and they just want to get out maybe of the grind of always doing ranked, etc. And tournaments, you know, it's a thing that you don't see in all competitive games, and it's often a shame that it's not there, because it allows you, you know, to keep playing this game that you like and that you enjoy and that you spend a lot of time in, but, you know, in a different way with different stakes.
I'd like to ask you about something that seems really fundamental, really basic perhaps to players, which is the ball and the design of a ball in a sports game, right? Like I can only imagine that the tuning of the physics around the ball, you know, the way it, you know, friction interacts with it, the way it bounces off surfaces, how quickly it comes off of a player's foot, like that these details are actually probably very sensitive to change and really matter in terms of the type of experience you're trying to create. So can you talk a little bit about that? You know, you think of the ball as a character. How is it tuned as you see it today?
Yeah, it's actually a very, very big subject. There's multiple ways to approach it. And the thing is, you have to make sacrifices between different things. So one of the most important aspects of making Rematch, and which is one of the biggest thing that comes from Sifu and the way Sloclap makes games, is worrying about the game feel. You want the fact, whenever you hit the ball, you want it to feel good, right? And so in Rematch, when you shoot the ball, it goes fast, it goes far, and it goes, you aim with your crosshair, so you really decide where it goes, and you're adding the effect to it. And if it's on target, bam, you have this extra sound effect. So it's a big part of it. And then you have to balance that against the rest of the game, because if you have a ball, that goes too fast, too far, how do defenders react to it? How does the goalkeeper react to it? Does it mean that you can just go from one side of the field to the other without having to interact with the midfield? And these are all issues that you have to balance out. It's hard to do because it sometimes feels like you have to sacrifice one for the other. And we did change some things until very, I'm not going to say late, but we did change a lot of things during development on the way it interacts, the way the ball bounces, the way it the friction in the air, the drag in the air, to try and add more game feel, or maybe change the way the ball is sort of stops at a specific point after a pass, or does it keep rolling so that it adds more keeps the game more dynamic, and you have to sort of chase around and it feels more natural. It's a big part, as you say, of the way the game feels. It's sort of the basic brick of the game. It's like an atomic component of the game, the way the ball reacts, the way it moves around. But yeah, we had to build a lot of the game around it.
Well, Pierre and Dylan, thanks so much for speaking with me today, and best of luck in the updates to come for Rematch.